Today I'm going to be roasting an Ethiopian Kayan Mountain on a Hive Digital Dome coffee roaster here at home. I'm going to be doing a really light roast, and I'd like to show you how I do that, so stick around. Alright, welcome to the Virtual Coffee Lab. Thanks for joining me today. We are going to be roasting 170 grams of an Ethiopian washed Kayan Mountain coffee that I purchased from Royal Coffee out in California. I've had some great coffee from those guys, and I've got a little bit of this coffee left. I've had it for quite a while, and I've got a few pounds left that I want to roast. And I thought I would do an experiment today with the Hive. One of the things I love about the Hive is I don't have to burn a pound of coffee if I want to do some experiments. I've got a smaller amount of coffee. And the other is that the sky's the limit with the Hive. I can try all kinds of crazy roasting methods, roasting techniques with this roaster. And I'm going to be doing that today. I'm going to be attempting a very short roast. I'm trying to go for a really light and bright fruity coffee. Light as in light roast, and also just kind of a light and bright acidic coffee that I will enjoy. Some might call it a fruit bomb. I'm not sure if this coffee is still capable of that because of its age. So that's going to be a topic that I'd love to hear some discussion on and get some experience from you guys with as we go through this roast. Have you had experiences with coffee, with older coffee, that is losing its life? And what was that like? What did you notice about it that caused you to think that? And even what did you do to counteract that? Did you do anything to the coffee, the green coffee, before you roasted it to kind of bring back some of its life? I'm doing the same thing that I've done before. If you watched my video, Taking Control of Your Roast, I'll have the link up here. I charted out all of my times and temperatures on this roast. And just like I did with that one, every 30 seconds I had a temperature and a time that I wanted to hit, that I wanted to be able to make here with this Hive. And so you'll see here as I get this started, you'll see in my roast that I have that sheet laying right next to the roaster, right next to the stove with my times and temperatures, and that is the plan. That's my roasting plan that I'm following. Now, we'll talk more about that in just a second. 300 degree charge temperature is what I'm marking it at, and I'll have the times and temperatures shown every 30 seconds so you can see what my target temperature was for that time and my actual temperature. Immediately I'm starting to move this coffee. I do not want to let this coffee sit and just sit in that hot roaster because I will get some roasting defects. So for the first 30 seconds, you'll notice that the temperature is counting down. We went from 300 degrees down to 238 degrees in the first 30 seconds. And that's because on this Hive Digital Dome roaster, I have this probe that comes with the roaster that is reading the bean temperature and displaying it on that digital readout that's right there in front of me, 218 degrees. You'll see that the bean temperature, instead of the bean temperature going down, you'll start to see the bean temperature rise right now. And that's what we call turning point, 1 minute and 1 second at 216 degrees. And so now the beans, and they've always been warming. Since room temperature, they're constantly warming up. But the bean temperature and the probe have caught up with each other, and we have this event called turning point. All right, so I have each of my events marked here, including dry end, first crack, and drop, but I also have my times and temperatures, and you're going to see all of that. You'll notice that my target temperature says 283 degrees, but I'm only at 221 degrees or whatever it was when that read. And that's because my times and temperatures, that my progress is a linear line. It's a straight line. So I basically said, okay, I want to reach dry in 4 minutes, and I literally divided that by 8. And every 30 seconds, I had to be at a certain temperature. Well, that's a straight line. Well, here, things are heating up, and so we have a curve, and so that's why there's a disparity between the temperatures that I'm supposed to be at and the temperature that the hive is actually reading. But eventually this is going to catch up with each other, and then from that point on I'll stay on track until a little further in the roast where I make a mistake, and we'll talk about that. Okay, here we are continuing to move the hive around at 2 minutes and 30 seconds. I'm supposed to be at 306 degrees, but I'm at 267. That disparity is getting less and less the closer we get to the 4-minute mark, and that's intentional. I mean, I knew that that was going to happen, but I'm racing towards getting my temperature and my time to match at dry, and that's what our goal is. So we're approaching 300 degrees, and here we are at 3 minutes. Target temperature of 317, the actual temperature of 235. That's not right. I made a mistake on my notes here, and I'll make sure that's corrected in the video. But I'm moving the hive around, and one of the things I need to do, I'm smelling, but I also need to look inside the hive. And I've got an LED light that allows me to flash in there and see very clearly. And that's one of the weaknesses of the hive is it doesn't have really good visibility of the beans. But when you use this light or any kind of a LED light to peer in and look, you'll be able to see the beans very clearly and know when you're hitting dry. And we're really close to that now. Dry is going to happen here in just a few seconds, and I can smell it, and I'm going to hit that light again to test it. And when I do that, one of the other negatives is that I have to stop the hive to be able to look inside. And so there I'm calling dry end at 4 minutes and 5 seconds with a target temperature of 340. I'm just a few degrees behind my target temperature right now. And we're going to continue to roast. My next target is every 30 seconds for the temperature, but my next target is going to be, for my event, is first crack. And that's going to be happening around 7 minutes, I think. I'll have to look at my notes. 348 is my target temperature, 352 is my actual temperature, and so you'll notice me raise the hive off the flame. I did that because I need to slow my roast down a little bit, and so I'm elevating the roaster away from the flame just to allow those temperatures to come back into alignment. The hive really comes in 3 different options. You can get this without the temperature display. You can buy it with the digital dome with that digital readout. 355 is my target, 362 is my actual. I'm still ahead, and so I keep the flame, the roaster elevated. I turn the flame down just a little bit too. The third option with the hive is one that plugs into Artisan. So if you want to actually log your roasts digitally through free logging software called Artisan, all you do is plug it in, and I believe it's pretty straightforward. I don't have that feature, so there may need to be a driver or something that you install as well. I'm not sure about that. If someone knows about that, they can make comments. All right, I am right on track with my time and temperature right now. I'm happy about that. We're going to be approaching first crack in about 15 degrees. So I'm estimating that to be about a minute and a half or so to reach my the target of first crack is my event. I'm getting tired moving this hive around. 370 degrees is my target, and I'm actually at 369. I'm 1 degree off, and I'm really happy about that. The next time and temperature we'll be reading out here shortly. In the meantime, I'm really shaking this hard, and I noticed that the hive is smoking a little bit. The beans are smoking a little bit, and I haven't really had that experience before. I'm really using more heat than I have in the past, so I have to turn on the exhaust fan in my kitchen. 378 is my target temp, and I'm only 1 degree off, and that is great news. Now, I make a mistake here, and I want you guys to be able to see it. As soon as first crack hits, my temperatures start to increase quickly, and I don't compensate for that quick enough, and I finally find myself way further ahead in my roast than I want to. I have too much momentum. Heat is being released through the beans, and you add all that up together, and you start to have temperatures increase quicker than you want. And so here we go. 386 is my target, but look at my temperature. All of a sudden it went from 388 and I'm almost at like 394, 395 degrees. And I planned on dropping this coffee at 398. So I've got some big problems there. This is a mistake that I made, and I wanted to share that with you guys because this is a common mistake that can happen if we're not paying attention to and anticipating our times and temperatures and these increases that can take place. Now I've really elevated my roaster to try to slow that down, that roast down, and to kind of bring me back into alignment, at least keep my coffee from continuing to climb as much as it was. And what's happened is I've stalled my roast. I'm at 400 degrees, and I think I drop a little bit, like a degree, and then I come back up. But I'm at 400 degrees the rest of the roast, and that's basically a whole minute that I stayed at the same temperature. That's not good. You want to constantly have an increasing temperature when you're roasting your coffee, if possible. Now, there are some coffee devices that really don't do that. They kind of hit a temperature mark, and the beans, are just roasting in that environment. But that's not quite the same. And even here, I'm not quite sure if I would call this baking the coffee, but this is potentially something that may have happened to this coffee. I've got, I think, a 16% development on this time. And I quickly go outside to cool the beans. I have them in this cooling tray on my roaster here. I used that, took that right outside with the beans in it, and for 2 minutes, bounced them around, blew on them, and it's like 20 degrees outside, 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's pretty cold. The beans cooled really quick. So there's a couple of things that I want to talk about with this roast, and I'm looking for some comments and some feedback. I've really got two issues with this roast. So let me just put those out there. Number one, taking a look at the beans. Let's take a close look at these beans. You'll notice that you see some roasting defects. Do you see them? You'll notice that as I zoom in here that there is some scorching that has taken place on the beans. And these black marks that you see on the outside of the bean is where that bean rested and it burned on the hot surface of the roaster. That's not a good thing, because if you have enough of that, you will taste that in your cup. And if you're especially trying to roast a light and bright coffee, you definitely don't want to have any sort of a burnt or roastiness kind of creep into the flavor profile of the coffee. I'm looking for a real clean cup on this. But if you search around, you'll notice that there are some scorch marks on some of the beans, not a lot of the beans. So I'm kind of happy about that. So I do have some roasting defects. That's number one. Number two, I have this whole temperature issue with the 400 degrees kind of leveling off. And I'm concerned about like a baked effect where my coffee, the complexities will kind of flatten and I will have more of a muted coffee experience. One more thing, as you look at this roast, it is a light roast, but I also see some beans that are kind of light, and I mean lighter than some of the other beans. And again, this is an Ethiopian coffee. It's a washed coffee, so I would have hoped to have had a little more consistency, but I think because I went light, when you go lighter in your roasts, you tend to have a little more inconsistencies. The Hive is an awesome roaster. You get some really consistent roast level coloration in your beans. At least I have on just about every other roast that I've had. But I think because I've gone so light, I'm seeing these variations as well. Now comes the taste. I brewed this using a Clever Dripper. I also had my son brew this, and he used a Kalita, and we did some taste comparisons. I'm getting a little bit of acidity, but it's not a real big fruit bomb, not like I expected. Maybe a berry. I'm getting like a pucker, a juiciness, a little bit of sweetness in the coffee, but not a lot. And that's it. Other than that, there was a little bit of a papery kind of a taste. So I shared this coffee with my son, Michael. He's got a much better tasting palate than I do. He gets a small dose of raspberry followed by a light caramely body that quickly fades to nothing. As it cools, the initial dose of fruit opens up to a longer experience that's a bit like Nutella with a raspberry compote mixed in. The finish is clean, like something quickly evaporating into nothing. So I shared with him, and he asked, he said, was this a really short roast? Answer is yes, this is a pretty short roast. He thinks that it's an African coffee because of the berry notes, maybe a washed Ethiopian. And then he says, is this that crown jewel that we had that was always very light and we wished it had more flavor? So this coffee's never been a really big fruit bomb. And one of the things I wanted to do was to try to do a shorter roast to really highlight the acidity. The elephant in the room is that the coffee is a year old. And that's when I got it, and it probably was at least 6 months from the farm or even longer. And so I think that this coffee has kind of come to the end of its life. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that. If you have had experiences with coffee that is old, I mentioned earlier, what did you notice? How did it behave? And did you do anything to bring life back in? I have a pound or two, and I'm tempted to spray a little bit of water on the green beans and then wait a day or so and then try another roast just to see, because maybe we have some moisture loss in these beans that is basically taking some of the life out of it. And I've done a little reading online where some people have done that, and they've had some interesting results. So, have you roasted on an old coffee? Have you roasted on the Hive and done really short, light, and bright roasts? And what was your experience? How did you do it? I'm learning a lot about roasting and roasting with the Hive as I go along. But I thought I would try to just push it to its limit a little bit with this higher charge temperature and this shorter roast time. And if anyone has any comments or any experiences related to that, I'd love to hear those as well. So I hope that this video has been helpful to you guys. I'm trying to share different types of roasting experiences because not all of us like dark roasts, not all of us like medium roasts, some of us like really super light fruity roasts, and I want to be able to have something for everyone. Plus, I'm interested in learning how to roast a light and bright coffee. I think I'm just going to do it with a different coffee another time and see if I have a different outcome. All right, some questions for you. Do any of you drink light roasted coffee? I know there's some of you that do. Tell me about how you are roasting this coffee and how it differs from how I roasted it. If you're using an air roaster, most of you are using shorter roast times. I get that. Please go ahead and share. I know this isn't an air roasting system, but share how you treat or handle your coffee differently with a light roast as far as roasting times and temperatures. If you can do that, that would be great. For those that use the Hive or that roast on a drum or some other device, and you like a light roasted coffee or you are into roasting fruit bombs, then share your comments on how you do that. I would love to be able to hear that experience and learn from you as well. If you like what you've seen here in this video, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. That's the best way that you can help me and help support this channel is by subscribing. And I appreciate you guys being here today. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great week roasting. We'll see you next time.